Hello there, fellow Monster Madness ghouls and goblins. You're currently hearing the voice of a girl with no name, and it's here with very, very clear intentions to sound the alarm. Before you listen any further, beware that frightful spoilers and deliciously explicit language lie ahead. For once you find yourself in the midst of those telltale bumps in the night and the haunting howls of host laughter and cinematic judgment, there is no turning back. Choose wisely.
Hello, and welcome to another Fireside Chat. It's Matt. Shocking, I know. This week, I don't know how these are getting released because we're doing two of them pretty much back to back. But this time we have Josh from the Still Loading podcast, a friend of Erica's. Erica and I have both been on his podcast talking about video games of all sorts. We kind of get into tangents, and it was a fun time. But yeah, make sure you go check out anything that Josh does. He streams on Twitch from time to time and does the Still Loading podcast, which I've now said the name 14 fucking times, so I hope you remember it. But I do hope you enjoy it. Thanks. Thank you for joining me, Josh. Do you prefer Josh or Joshua?
Josh.
Okay. I don't know. Some people are weird about it. And I had a friend in high school who we both, it's a very strange story, but trust me, it'll make sense. He knew my pastor. I obviously knew my pastor because I went to high school with the kids and stuff, and that's whatever, very round like circle. So this Josh guy and I used to hang out. We'd always talk because his name was Pastor Powers, and he was from Oklahoma. So everything was very southern drawl. You go, are you going to go talk to Jesus Christ today, Matthew? So anytime I would see Josh, I would just go, Joshua. So that's where that whole story went. So anyways, Josh, Still Loading podcast.
Yes, that's me.
I guess for anyone who's listening to this who hasn't listened to your show before, would you mind doing a little brief explanation?
Sure. So the Still Loading podcast is a video game podcast that focuses on video game history, culture, and everything in between. I kind of describe it as a bit of a grab bag style podcast. And what I mean by that is that it's just a grab bag of gaming topics. I do a lot of deep dives into individual games. I do like scripted episodes where I dive into very niche parts of gaming history. Like I did a whole series on the history of real-time strategy games or RTS games, Age of Empires, all that kind of stuff. And but then I also do like interviews with people in the industry. I've had voice actors and composers and musicians and game developers on, and I've interviewed them. And then I do weird ideas like the Final Fantasy Draft, which is what happens when you take Final Fantasy and fantasy sports and mash them together in this Frankensteinian, which is, apropos for the Monster Madness, but this Frankenstein-esque mashup, and it turned out really well. And I've also done, it was a while ago, but I did an episode, and I want to do another one at some point called Still Loading Storytime, where I got a bunch of friends together and we did dramatic readings of old video game manuals. And I was surprised how well that turned out. So yeah, that is the Still Loading podcast, kind of like a grab bag mishmash of a ton of different gaming topics, retro to modern. It kind of covers a bit of everything.
The idea of reading old manuals brought such joy to me for some reason. I made a joke at work about we were trying to find a manual for something that was super old, and I'm like, well, you guys don't want to find the third word of the second paragraph on page 2 using the decoder? And everyone just stared at me. I'm like, okay. No one remembers old DRM, but that's just me.
Just straight out of like, what is it? Oh my gosh, why am I Star Tropics?
Oh, I remember it from the Sierra Online games. I completely forgot that Star Tropics had that too.
Well, it's funny. One of the manuals we read was the Clash at Demon Head manual from that NES game, which people who saw Scott Pilgrim will know more as the name of the band. I believe that's the name of the band. I'm trying to get it to load right now on my phone, but for some reason it's just not cooperating with me. But okay, here we go. the reason why we chose to read like old manuals is because back, on the specifically on the NES, like a lot of localization wasn't always the strongest, and that's no offense to anyone who did the translation, but you can't just directly translate or translate things from Japanese to English, because certain things just would make absolutely no sense in English. But so when they brought over games to localize them, let's make them more suitable for an American palate, or for American sensibilities. So sometimes they would change a lot of the names. So you'd have these crazy names of like locations, but then the hero's name would be like Jim. And it would just to take all the wind out of the sails. So the Clash of Demon Head manual kind of had something like this, and the way it's kind of written, maybe the character's name is actually what it is in Japanese, but I'm just going to read a little bit of it. This is kind of nuts to me. In the year 1990X, a secret command, Saber Tiger, is engaged in a savage war with the Demons Battalion. The Saber Tiger's youngest leader, Bang, that's his name, Bang, played a very large role in the fight to the admiration of his fellow commanders. After the completion of one campaign, Bang and his girlfriend, Mary, are enjoying a long-awaited vacation at the beach. Suddenly, they receive an urgent communication from headquarters. It reads, emergency code, blah, blah, blah. It's a bunch of numbers. I don't give a shit. The inventor of the Doomsday Bomb, Dr. Plum, is being held by the enemy atop Demon's Head Mountain, and it appears that the world is doomed unless Earth surrenders. And there's more to it, but that's kind of like just an idea. Like, the character's name is Bang.
It's just when they use weird name, like it's obviously they probably had very Japanese names, and then they just took American names, except for Bang.
I hope so. I mean, that's what it usually is. That's why a lot of times you would have like some crazy name, some crazy like location name that sounds very foreign, and then you'd have Jim as the character's name and stuff like that. And what's funny is that my friend who did the recording for this, for the dramatic reading for that manual, he did an Alex Jones impression reading that whole thing. It felt perfect. It added it to the conspiracy theory level of the manual.
That's awesome. So you talked about the different variations of video game culture that you've done. And obviously this is a horror podcast, so we have to talk about something horror. So have you done horror games, even horror adjacent games? And I don't recall if horror games are even your thing, but have you covered any on Still Loading?
Not many. It's funny, I'm not the biggest horror fan. I love your guys' show though, because obviously I've been friends with Erica for years, but also
I'm sorry to hear that.
Genuinely think you guys have a really good show. And I've actually started watching more horror movies because of your podcast, so that's a credit to you all. But for my podcast, I've covered one or two. I covered Manhunt. You ever play Manhunt for the PS2?
Yes.
That game is fucking wild.
It really is. For anyone not familiar, Manhunt, I believe, was a game you played a prisoner.
No, you played a guy who I think either was recently released from prison. I'm trying to remember. Basically, he gets blackmailed. No, he gets falsely imprisoned. And then he gets blackmailed by the prison warden to basically do all these snuff film kills.
Yeah, I think Manhunt 2 was more just an escape. Either way, it was for whatever year that came out, early 2003. A stealth game where you just like killed people, like very blatantly cold-blooded killed people. This is really before the popularization of Grand Theft Auto also. So like there was not a lot of games where you just killed to kill.
Well, no, so Grand Theft Auto 3 came out in, I want to say 2001. Let me just double check on that for you real quick. Yeah. So Grand Theft Auto 3 is what put Grand Theft Auto on the map, and then Vice City came out in 2002. So Manhunt coming out in 2003, Grand Theft Auto was already at like the height of its like
It's okay.
It was going. I don't know how else to describe it. But Manhunt still was such a departure from that, cuz like Rockstar has always been known to kind of push the envelope, as it were, of content in games. Like obviously, Grand Theft Auto has received large amounts of criticism from various communities and whatnot. And Manhunt was even worse. It was one of the most violent video games of all time, and even playing it, like, while the graphics still feel very cartoonish, every time you do a stealth kill, it does this bizarre like close up where you get this grainy like snuff film texture to the game camera, and like some of the kills are like, you're putting a bag around a dude's head and suffocating and then punching him in the head until it's like bloody on the inside. It's fucked up. Like, it's really dark.
So do you think maybe it had a lot to do more with the fact of how graphic, and I don't know if outlandish is the right term, but it wasn't just like, oh, here's a gun, you're going to shoot someone, which you've done in games for years. It was the closer, more intimate murder, I guess. I don't know. I don't ever think that there was a game widely distributed that one of the objectives was to put a bag over someone's head and punch it until it's bloody. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm even forgetting the punching till bloody part. Maybe it was just suffocation, but either way, like,
I think you're right, because I do remember that.
It's really intense, and there was a whole lot of controversy around it. Apparently, even like the game developers who are working on it were super uncomfortable with the level of violence being depicted, and there was apparently almost a mutiny in the company over the amount of violence in the game. There's even stuff like in now this is according to Wikipedia here, but the murder of Stefan Pakira, sorry. Apparently, this kid was murdered, and when the police like checked out the murderer's murderer's like place, they ended up blaming Manhunt for the murder, essentially, or that like as an influence on the kid that murdered their son or something like that.
I can't think of the term either, but I know what you're trying to say.
Well, I'm not exactly certain if like they searched his house and they found it in his PS2, or it was just one of those things where they knew this kid played it and so they blamed it on it. Either way, the game ended up getting blamed. I'm not just going to read Wikipedia off in the middle of the show, but that's pretty much what ended up happening. I mean, obviously it was really tragic, and it was just one of those other things where, people trying to blame video games for the violence that, their kids committed, or and vice versa. But it's just the game constantly courted controversy, and it's not an awful game, though the end boss of it is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. I don't know did you ever get to the final boss of the game?
I don't think so. I'm looking it up right now.
His name, I believe, was Pigsy. I'm going to double check.
Yeah.
Pigsy.
What the fuck?
It's a big naked dude wielding a chainsaw, and
with a huge crank on him.
Oh yeah, he's got a swanger, just swinging all over the place.
Shit.
It's one of the wildest things I've ever seen. Now, I played a little bit of Manhunt. It was pretty intense, and then I just ended up watching a playthrough of it. Actually, I think I might have watched a playthrough of it more than do I have it? I'm gonna have to double check if I even have a copy in my collection. I think I might have just borrowed it from my guest that I had on the episode. But it was an experience for sure. So not in short at all, in conclusion, yes, I have covered horror games before on the show. I've also covered The Last of Us 1 and 2.
Oh, nice.
Covered those two, covered Manhunt. Something that's more, I guess, spoopy, as it were. I did the top 10 scariest moments in non-horror video games.
Interesting.
Yeah, because there's always those moments in games that just scare the shit out of you, even if the game itself is not meant to be a scary game. I forget my entire list. I recorded it like a few years ago or so, but there was, what was the one I did? One of the ones I included was the piano from Mario 64. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Scared the shit out of me. And the first time I got to that part, I was a grown ass man and I was not expecting it, and it scared the shit out of me.
I had mentioned Sierra Online games earlier. Did you ever play any of them? Like any of all of them?
Never any of them. I know that, King's Quest and Police Quest and all that stuff, but I've never played a Sierra Online game. I've played a few LucasArts games, some of their point and click adventures, but I don't believe I've ever really tried a Sierra Online game.
So there only ended up being 2 games, but they were called Manhunter. So it's at the time, it came out in 1989. I don't remember what. It's just post-apocalyptic New York. Oh, 2002. Sorry, 2004. So the game takes place in 2004. It came out in 1988. So
okay.
basically these alien eyeballs have come to Earth and taken over the planet, and the only people that can kind of move freely are the manhunters, who are basically trying to hunt man. And you just do the eyeballs bidding, and then you kind of like defect, and then you try to overtake the eyeballs and shit. It's fucking such a fucking wild game. But there's one part in it, and I want to see if I can try to find the screenshot. But you find a body, and it's like 1988 graphics. Okay, it just keeps showing me Manhunt. But it's like this gray-faced dude whose cheeks are all sunken in, and it scared the living fucking hell out of me.
The game seems kind of creepy to begin with.
Super creepy. And then they made a second one called San Francisco, and people have been clamoring for a third and never really got it. But if you're looking at screenshots, there's like, you'll see a blue face where like the cheek is kind of deteriorated away on the side and the teeth. So in the game, when you look at that guy's head, his eyeballs start rolling around and then they pop out and fly away. Like,
what's this game called again? Sorry,
Manhunter. So I don't know. I think you could probably download it from.
It might be on Good Old Games.
I don't think it is. I don't think it ever made it there, because I would have bought the shit out of it.
Or My Abandonware.
That's, I think, where I played it.
Because that, let me see. There's classicreload.com. Let me see. You can play it in browser.
Yeah.
I think. Let me just, yeah, you can play it in browser.
Fucking A.
Yeah. Classicreload.com has the whole thing. It has DOSBox built in. And can, yeah, the orbs invaded New York in 2002. Yeah, it's like the opening line. Yeah, you can play it in browser. There you go.
Fuck yeah. Holy shit, there's a lot of games on here. All right, I need to not just start playing these right now.
There's a lot of great stuff like that you can just watch. You can play those types of things whenever you want. I've done on my show, I did some text adventure games that I couldn't get anywhere else but on My Abandonware. And I did like what I did was, there's James Bond text adventure games that came out in the 80s.
Oh wow.
And I didn't play through them, but I had guests on, and I was the one typing all the commands into the game, and my guests, we just recorded a playthrough of it. So I read all the prompts out, and the audience could kind of follow along with us as we played through these text adventures. And I don't know how well the episodes were received. I never got any, like negative feedback, but I had fun doing them. And it was stuff that like I wouldn't be able to fill a full episode on a text adventure, because there's not enough really gameplay mechanics to fill like an hour and 15 to an hour and 20 minute episode. So playing through it, I thought, was the next best thing. And it kind of fits for the podcast medium anyway. So
that's a fun idea, because I remember playing text-based games like when I first started gaming, and it was like, you see a tree to the north, go north, shit like that.
You guys should do that like with like Zork or something, because Zork's got some creepy elements to it.
Are you serious? I don't think I've ever played Zork.
I think Zork has some creepy elements to it. I mean, like, because the whole thing is like a dungeon adventure, and you end up getting killed by shit too, I believe. But I don't know. You could probably find like a horror text adventure. And,
that's what I just started Googling, was horror text-based games.
Yeah, like that would be a really fun. I know Erica would probably want to be the one to kind of be the DM, quote unquote, of it, like put in all the prompts and read everything back to you and Dan. But I think it would be kind of hysterical to listen to like her and Dan argue over the choices of a text adventure. Erica, when you're editing this, please do this for me.
I can hear it now, and it's like Erica's saying, "Oh, you can go straight into a field of flowers, or take a right to a chainsaw store." Dan would be like, "I'll take a right." Erica go, "Why the fuck would you do that?" Oh, God. Yeah, I can hear it too. This is gonna be great.
Right? I would totally do that. There you go. Free idea.
Now I just need her to make it happen.
The thing is, it's really not that difficult to do. The only thing I suggest doing, if you guys end up doing it, is whoever is like quote unquote DMing, typing in the prompts and Or I mean, technically, you're more than welcome to participate along with it, be part of the decision making, but come up with like a set of commonly used commands from the game, because otherwise, normally you play, especially old PC games, you play them with a manual because it gives you the general, like the basic terms that you can use. Otherwise, you're going to come across, like you're in a room, there's this, there's that, like there's no direction for you, like to open door, or like or move west or move right, but you won't know like how specific you need to be. Like when we were doing James Bond, there was literally like to turn on the car, you couldn't say just turn on the car. You had to say pick up keys, then turn on the car. It was stuff like that where like you had to type every single command out. So I do think what I did when I had the guests on is I had the quote unquote strategy guide in front of me, so that way if they got stuck, I could move, for the expediency of the show, I could move it along. And it also helped them realize like, okay, we have to be this specific in order to progress through the game or progress through the story. But that's my only real advice I would offer if you guys decide to do it, just because it is frustrating when you're in a room and you don't know what commands to offer it, because you have the entire English language. Which ones did they have in mind?
See, and that's funny you mentioned that, because back on the Sierra Online games is when I remember playing Space Quest as a kid. And a lot of times it's like you would type something and it would just be like, I don't understand that word.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we kind of forget the fact that even as games progressed, but it's like they only had a limited database of words. There was no internet for it to search if you type something. So I remember a lot of times just in frustration, like, suck my dick. And it's like, I don't understand the word dick. I'm like, can't even offend the game correctly.
That's what when LucasArts kind of took over the adventure game genre, that's one of the innovations they did, where instead of you having to type in every possible command, they gave you a list of verbs that you could choose from.
Yep.
So you have pick up, open, walk, stuff like that, and it just made it a lot easier, where you weren't having to constantly guess which command the game wanted you to use, when you had like 9 different options and you can try all 9. Like everything you needed to do was right there, or everything you needed was right in front of you, versus just having to guess. So like that's one of the reasons why people in general, I feel like the perception is LucasArts adventure games or point and click adventure games have a lot more fondness towards them because of stuff like that, versus while the Sierra Online games were super popular, I don't think they've aged quite as well because of that.
Right. And it's thankfully you I don't want to say you talked so long, but it was like your idea was fleshed out enough that it gave me time, because my first thought when you started talking about the pickup put down was Maniac Mansion, and then I was like, oh shit, that was a Lucasfilms game, or LucasArts, which became. And I was like, well, was it the first? And then I didn't realize, and I have not played anything that came before it. So there was 2 years worth of games that Lucasfilm Games put out before Maniac Mansion. I don't know if that was present in any of those, but still, just to have kind of not only the more direct ability to see what you can do, but it helped with like the problem solving of like, okay, well, I can either pick up or put down this object, or I can open or close it. I can walk here, I can walk there. When you're left to your vocabulary, definitely becomes a lot more difficult to point out what you want to do. But there was always, the basic like look room or open door and shit like that it was, kind of universal. But I think if someone, like, say, you mentioned you haven't really played them, so if you were to go play one of the earlier, any of the Quest games, the first, I think it was the first 3 Space Quests were all text type. The first 3 King's Quest, and then the first 2 Police Quests. So if you were to go play any one of those, I don't think you would have as much of a good, like, you wouldn't have as good of a time if I did it. But I'm also playing off the nostalgia of playing it as a kid and like just remembering the story and like figuring shit out. So
yeah,
that is 100% the reason that those games resonate with me as much as they do. Also, Manhunter was typing but no walking. Like you would just go point to point. It wasn't actually walking across the screen. But now you have to play that. I need you to play that game.
I mean, just for historical importance alone, I need to play some of the Sierra Online games, because those were some of the first text adventure games that, like, well, the history, there's a whole, like, evolution of the text adventure or text game genre, which eventually turned into the point and click adventure game genre. Like the Sierra Online games were the first to really produce any type of like graphical interface, not interface, but like graphical elements combined with the text adventure. So it was no longer just pure text. And obviously those graphics continued to improve. And actually, fun story, the people who founded Sierra Online were a married couple named Ken and Roberta Williams.
Yep.
And they are coming out with a new game soon. They were like semi-retired from game development, and they're coming out with a new one. I don't know exactly what it's called or when it's coming out again, but they are the creators of Sierra Online, and they are working on a new game.
I had heard that I'm trying to scramble to find the name of the new game. It's not Leisure Suit Larry, though.
It might be, nope, never mind. I was going to say Phantasmagoria, but that came out in 95.
No. Yeah, that's such a good game, though. I streamed playing through 1 and 2. 2 is, have you ever played them? Have you ever played the first one?
Never. I've never played any of them. I am trying to find what the new game they are making, though, is. I'll let you know when I can find it.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I was looking on his Wikipedia page, but it's not.
They are remaking Colossal Cave Adventure in 3D. Colossal Cave Adventure. Colossal Cave 3D Adventure is what they are currently working on. It seems like.
Colossal Cave Adventure is the first graphical text-based game.
Okay.
So I Googled that. Then we got on talking about Ken and Roberta Williams, and so that's fucking cool. To some extent, like I never played it, so I don't know.
And yeah, the original Colossal Cave Adventure was a text-based adventure from 1976. It's the history of like PC gaming is one of the most convoluted out there, because unlike console gaming, PC games, there was, and it was big over in the UK as well. Like the UK had this micro PC market that we did not really get here in the US, where they had a whole bunch of like Rare, the people who made Donkey Kong Country and GoldenEye and Perfect Dark. They got their start over in the UK as Ultimate Play the Game was their original company. And they made a whole bunch of incredible games for the ZX Spectrum, as they call it over there, which is it's not an Apple II by any stretch, but it's kind of like it's a microcomputer. It's a brand of computer out there. I don't know too much about it because it never really took off, or I don't even believe it ever really released here, that platform. But similarly to what happened in the UK, it also happened over here in the US. Like the game market, like you could make your own game and ship it just like anything else. So the way you would have to do it is, you would sell like little Ziploc baggies with like the diskettes that you copied your game onto and printed out your own manual, and you would sell it at like your local store and shit like that. Like it was really mom and pop-esque because there was no like large distribution channels and there was no internet to distribute it. So like you had these mountains of games that probably no one will ever hear about because they only released in a tiny little town, and it never got lucky and made it outside of the town. And these games could be absolute shit, they could be absolutely amazing and groundbreaking, and no one would ever know because there was no mass like way to publish it at the time unless you got to deal with a publisher, so like the PC gaming is just like the Wild West in terms of game history, because there's just so much that can be unaccounted for. Like hell, if you one of the like the Wolfenstein games started out as like a side-scrolling adventure, like a stealth game, like a top-down stealth game in like the early 80s, and then became one of the biggest shooter series of all time.
Right. Backtracking a little bit, Colossal Cave came out 4 days ago. It is available on Steam.
Oh shit!
So that's the brand new one. Yep. Because I started Googling because I wanted to see what it looked like. Took me right to a Steam page. So it's currently on sale. I don't know if it'll still be on sale when this episode comes out. But another thing is I found on my searching is that if you text the number 1-669-238-3683, you can play Colossal Cave via text messages.
What?
Yeah, it's a server will respond after a couple seconds with the opening spiel of Colossal Cave Adventure.
That's kind of awesome.
Yep. You could type the compass directions to move, in, exit, get, drop to interact. It says there are a few other commands, but keep it as simple as possible. Like, that's actually really fucking cool. Someone took the time to make that.
There is, just doing like research for my show and finding like the random things in there. There is an entire genre of gaming that, I mean, believe it or not, it's still semi alive, and the way you kind of describe Colossal Cave Adventure is actually kind of in the same vein as that. It's called play by mail games. Have you ever heard of these?
Heard of them, but I'd never really looked into them.
So play by mail is exactly kind of how it sounds. The way you would play a game is that you would write down the move you want to make and mail it to this company, and then they would calculate, like if this is like Dungeons and Dragons or something, you would write down like, attack dragon with this or something like that, and then you would mail it to the company that's running the game. They would calculate all the moves for all the players and then mail back the response. So it was literally like through the US Postal Service playing a game. And then it turned into a computer game because before it was all done by hand. And then once computers became more affordable, they could just plug in the moves to the computer and the computer would do all the calculations for them. And this genre, believe it or not, still exists. There's a God of War game in this genre, technically. The way it's evolved, it's no longer done by snail mail. It's done over Facebook Messenger. It's the same idea, though, where you're typing in a command, you're typing in your move, and it's sending it to a remote computer to do all the calculations and then send you the response. And so even though it's not technically mail, it's considered a play-by-mail game because none of the processing is done in-house. It's moves are sent somewhere, processed, and then the results are sent back.
That's such a wild concept. Like, try explaining that to someone who, like a child right now. Be like, so once upon a time, people would put a response in the mail and then wait for maybe more days to
4
figure
to
out
5 business days, who knows?
Yeah, what came back. So I was like, fuck yeah, attack that dragon, and then 5 days later you find out that he just fucking stepped on you and you're dead.
Right?
Like, what a bummer.
What's even more wild is that there are some games that are still going on, like that you can still mail in your moves, and they're continuously going. Probably the most recognizable name in it, not recognized to, like, I didn't know about it, so I look it up. There's a company called Flying Buffalo Incorporated. They pioneered, this is according to Wikipedia, mind you, I have to do some other research to corroborate it, but they pioneered the first commercially available PBM. So before, like, you would have to get some kind of like how, some people would host their own servers for like games and whatnot. Like, eventually some of that shit costs money, and so you would actually pay money to play this game and you would have to mail it out. It's just, the whole thing is just wild to me. It's such a surreal experience of a game. I'm very curious how, like, what people liked and disliked about it.
Yeah, and I mean, the number of games that are still going on is pretty insane, assuming this list on Wikipedia is anywhere near up to date. But I mean, they're saying that they had games that started in 2018. Yeah, the God of War one started in 2018.
Right? It's just so but it's still, I mean, that at least makes sense why it's still going on, because it's a lot less intensive. You can just do it through Facebook Messenger versus the others that you're still physically mailing snail mail to people. Like, I'm still blown away by that even being a thing.
Yeah, but you have to assume that the audience to this are people that played it when they were younger, and you're getting on the nostalgia. I have a really hard time believing that there is much of a market for younger people. Even, I mean, I'm in my mid to late 30s and I never did this. So you're looking at people in their 40s who would have been doing this, potentially some younger, but you played with your child or whatever. But still, and it's like, it's such a niche market. But like you said, if it's through Facebook Messenger, all you have to do is really write a bunch of logic code, and then whatever comes in, it spits back out, or be the person who says, "Oh fuck, this person went north. Well, this is the response," and send it to them.
It's also kind of interesting because like this type of game, like where you would you send a command to the, like, I don't know, this type of game isn't like it's tangentially connected, but like the original Oregon Trail game, right? It wasn't done through play by mail, but it was played on a teletype computer. And for those who don't know what a teletype computer is, it's before my time, and I believe it'd be before your time too, Matt.
Yep.
teletype is like you would type in a command, and the way you would get a response from the computer is that it would print it out on paper. So every time you would just type something in, you'd have to wait for the computer to print out its response and go through all of its things, because there was no monitor to feed you the results or anything like that, which is just kind of reminds me, like you probably could have played Oregon Trail with play by mail. If someone sends in a turn, they type it in, they get a response back from the computer, you just rip that shit off, mail it back to the dude, and see what they want to do. That I don't believe that happened, though. Oregon Trail was created by a couple of student teachers who were trying to find an interesting way to teach U.S. history through computer games, and it was kind of taught from there. And then I believe they sold the rights to it to MECC, which is the Minnesota Educational Computing Company, if I'm remembering what the acronym stands for correctly. And then that's kind of like how we got to know the Oregon Trail as it is now, through MEC.
And the weirdest thing is, a new Oregon Trail game came out on November 14th of 2022.
Really?
Yeah. So, it's weird to think that it was two teachers wanted to teach history in a fun manner and made probably one of the most iconic games of our generation.
Yeah. And I'm a little too young for the original Oregon Trail, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm seeing it right now. It's like I'm watching the new update of it. It's very interesting.
It was fucking cool. I'm gonna buy it. Chances are really good I'm gonna buy this.
$30. I might wait till a sale for it. But
100% waiting for a sale.
I played Oregon Trail 2, which had like voice acting and crappy full motion video, and I loved every minute of it. Because it was, that's what I grew up on.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
The whole PC gaming is just such a crazy genre. And you mentioned a while ago, sorry, this has been on my mind for a little bit. I wanted to bring up this fun fact. You mentioned Maniac Mansion, since we're talking about PC gaming just kind of, nebulously right now. Maniac Mansion was obviously one of the LucasArts biggest games that they ever created. But what's crazy, so how did you first play Maniac Mansion? Did you play it on the NES, or did you play it on PC or a computer?
NES.
Yep. So that's perfect, because this is specifically related to the NES version of the game. I had on my show a guy named Howie Rubin. Howie Rubin was the president of the U.S. branch of Jollyco, which was a game developer and publisher. They are most well known on the NES for their Bases Loaded games. They did that baseball series, Bases Loaded. They are also the publisher of Maniac Mansion on the NES. So obviously LucasArts did the development. They just published it on the Nintendo. And Howie told this crazy story when I had him on the show about how, do you remember in Maniac Mansion, I don't know how far, I've never beaten it myself, but when you play it, there is a moment you can stick a hamster in the microwave.
Yep.
So that is not apparently that is not in every version of the game. Nintendo infamously had a lot of censorship rules and very specific, tight rules for developers and publishers on what they could and could not include, what they can and cannot include in their games for the Nintendo. And that hamster was way too far for anything. But when they sent it off to get approved by Nintendo didn't say anything about it. So oh my gosh, we snuck this by. They knew Nintendo wasn't going to want it, but they're well, let's just see if they even notice it. And they didn't. So they order a bunch of copies of it, because the way it worked back then is that you couldn't hire a third-party company to manufacture the cartridges or whatever. You had to buy your cartridges through Nintendo, which there's a whole rabbit hole I could go down about Nintendo's business practices back then. But just it's a little shady. That's all you really got to know for lack of context. So they had to buy a whole bunch of copies of it. And the copies were on the way on a freighter over to the US. And Howie gets a call from a rep at Nintendo of America. And they're we found the hamster. you can't sell your game. We're not going to allow you to sell your game with this hamster in it. Like that's just we can't allow that. And Howie looked at his contract and he's like, well, let me call you back. He tells the Nintendo, let me call you back. He double checks his contract. He calls his lawyer to make sure to make sure that what he's about to do is, covered by his contract. And his lawyer says it is. So he calls the Nintendo guy back. He's like, all right, I can't sell them. Then where do you want me to send them? Because I'm not going to sign for them. Because Howie and Jollyco USA will not legally own those cartridges unless they are physically on Howie's desk and he signs for them. So if they don't sign for them, Nintendo's just left with a bunch of cartridges they're not willing to sell because of the hamster thing in it. And he says, oh, he was yelling and screaming at me and, this and that. But he's like, you talk to your boss, Mr. Arakawa, excuse me. And they talked to the boss. He hashed it out. He strong-armed Nintendo and he was allowed to keep the hamster in the game. But if they ordered another batch of the games, they had to remove the hamster from it. So out there now, there are two different versions of Maniac Mansion for the NES. One where you can explode a hamster in the microwave, and one where you can't.
So I guess I didn't know the full story around it, but I knew that there was a hamster, but I guess I never really paid much attention to figure out which one was which. I mean, after the last time I would have played it, it would have been on an emulator. So I'm sure whatever.
There's no way for you really to know either until you get to it.
Right. Yeah, there's no difference other than that. But funny, every game that we have talked about has recently gotten a remake release.
Did Maniac Mansion get a
Maniac Mansion it's called Meteor Mess 3D. It's a fan remade game that is available for free. MeteorMess.de. It looks like it came out on October 5th, 2022. They're actively updating it. Version 1.3 just came out. But it is not like, have you ever played Day of the Tentacle or seen Day of the Tentacle?
I've never played or seen. I've seen bits and pieces of it. I haven't played a lot of adventure games. It's one of the ones that one of the genres I have. It's like kind of well underserved in my gaming history.
Fair enough.
But I've seen it.
Yeah. Okay. So I believe there was either a updated version of Maniac Mansion that looks like that, the real cartoony. It looks more like straight like 3D models, and it's made to look like a real game, not cartoony. So it should be rather interesting. I'm intending on downloading this, see if I can play through it.
Interesting.
And you can't forget the TV show.
I forgot there was a TV show.
Yeah, I think I tried to watch it once. It was not very good.
I'm not surprised. I feel like a lot of those game cartoons were. Here's a little bit of a good segue, I guess. I do a whole series on my show on Captain N the Game Master. We're talking about game cartoons.
That is the maybe peak video game TV show ever, because it just puts as many as it can into it, but
not really well. But they try. They definitely try. There's a lot of interesting attempts to include various characters. They couldn't call Captain N Captain Nintendo due to I believe at the time the U.S. government was cracking down on how they market to kids, because before you could just market, that's why you have He-Man and G.I. Joe had their own cartoons as just marketing tools to sell their toys to kids. And the U.S. government was cracking down at the time. So they couldn't call it Captain Nintendo. It was just Captain N for that reason.
I guess. I don't like it, but I guess.
I mean, that's. I mean, why else would? I mean, it's licensed by Nintendo. I can't see another reason why they wouldn't just call it Captain Nintendo.
That is very odd, but I'm sure that there was some guy who gets paid way too much money made that decision, and that's why they went with Captain N.
I don't know. I prefer Captain N to Captain Nintendo, but I really wish they would have changed Kid Icarus, Pit. They call him Kid Icarus in the show, but Pit's voice and especially Mega Man's voice.
I only ever watched that one episode that you watched on Twitch. It was way back when. But no part of me, I think I could not bring myself to watch the rest of it. It was pretty bad.
There's a handful of episodes that are fun. It's just a lot of them are there's something for sure. semi-unironically enjoy the show, but actually no. I would say I mostly ironically enjoy the show. There are moments that I think are really cool, but most of it is just like it's so bad it's fun.
Well, and I think that's all you can really hope for in a show like that. Like, obviously, when you're a kid, you would just be like, "Oh, this sucks," and watch something else. But as an adult, you want something that's fun, bad and fun.
And that's why it's kind of perfect for the podcast, because they're like, they're kind of short. They're only 20 minutes long. You don't have to suffer too long, though. I don't know when exactly you stopped by the stream, if it was just for a random episode I was watching, or when I did my Captain N-a-thon, where I watched the entire first season straight through in an entire stream. Which I think, how long did that? It was like I want to say like a 6-hour stream or something like that, or close to it. It was long, and I don't know if I'll do that. I'm not going to do it for the whole show. That's for damn sure.
How long was that show?
2.5, really. The reason I say half is because season 3, there's not a lot of episodes, and the episodes that were there are just 15 minutes. Like, they're halves. They're like 12 minutes long. Or 11 minutes long or something like that, because it split the half hour with, I think like Super Mario World or something like that.
That makes sense.
I'd have to double check what it split it with, but yeah, they split the time.
Nice. Nice because it got shorter towards the end. But
well, the first season's only like 13 episodes, I want to say, and so is the second. Like, each season isn't that long. It just it probably just showed on repeat a lot. Once we finish Captain N, I want to do other video game cartoons. I kind of want to do the Donkey Kong Country cartoon.
Have you ever watched the Legend of Zelda cartoon?
Yeah, a few times. It's fun enough.
Yeah, agreed. It's like randomly I own it on DVD for some reason.
There wasn't that many episodes. I'm pretty sure you can buy. I'm pretty sure I bought my brother the DVD for Christmas, and then just because I didn't know what else to get him, like, well, he likes Zelda, and like he doesn't really get me anything, so he doesn't really have room to complain. So when he opened the gift, he just went, "Oh, thanks." I think he hated it.
Oddly enough, I got it from my brother for Christmas once too. I didn't know it existed until he bought it for me, so it was fun. It was a decent watch, especially for having grown up on Legend of Zelda. You know what I mean? I
have to actually cover the original game on the show at some point.
What? Had I known that, I may have picked that game.
Oh, I guess, we should probably say only, like 50 some odd minutes in, right. Matt was on an episode of my show. We covered Contra.
Yeah, I was at one point earlier. I thought of a way to get to that, and then we started talking about something else, and I never looked back.
It's fine. We got it. We squeezed it in here. Yeah, Matt was on the Contra episode, and somehow we managed to talk an hour and 20 minutes on that game.
I mean, I feel like we could have talked more. We just tried to keep it to a manageable amount of time. There was just so much. There's so much like to that game, I guess, while also being absolutely nothing at all.
It's I feel like it's tough to find, like, especially the NES games, not necessarily Contra, but like I did an hour and 20 on like Russian Attack with my buddy Chris from Retro Hangover, and like that game just I don't know how we did it, because that game, there's not a lot of variety. The backgrounds change and you just kind of run around with a knife and stab people.
That game sounds fucking awesome.
You have to watch a playthrough of it, or at least just see the video of the guy stabbing people, because it's the weirdest thing. When I say knife, I mean knife, not a sword. He can stab maybe an inch or two in front of him. So you're just standing still while waves of enemies come at you, and you're just kind of mashing the stab button, and they're just dropping in one hit. You also drop in one hit, so you have to be careful, though.
I'm watching a playthrough here.
It's a fun game. I enjoyed playing it, but it's
weird.
It's a weird experience for sure.
It's a whole body motion.
Yeah, it's almost like he's popping his leg out too.
Yes. Yeah, so whatever, I don't know, it's a speed run. For some reason, the guy is laying down and just aggressively mashing the stab button on the side of the screen. It looked like he was convulsing. It must be some sort of, I don't know if you want to call it a cheat or whatever, but by standing on the edge, you just seemed to kill it, because all of a sudden it was done. And it was like, you've finished the first target.
The game, I got pretty far in the game myself. I might have even beat it. I don't remember. It's not that crazy of a game. Really what it is like, you don't get any new abilities for the most part, but the enemies change their abilities. Like, they change what they can do as time goes on, type of thing. Like, enemies change up their patterns a lot and they change to different weapons. So it's not like, you know how like Mario, as you go along, you encounter different enemies, but Mario also has different powers that he gets
Mhm.
throughout the game. This, you pretty much get nothing. There's not really any advancements for you as a character, as you as a character. It's more just kind of like the enemies just get progressively difficult. And I think I mentioned in the episode, like, that version of difficulty isn't my favorite because it's like you're well, it can be done well where like it forces you to master the gameplay mechanics, but like those gameplay mechanics, if they're not fun or if they're too repetitive, it can get old after a while. And that's what I kind of found with Russian Attack, where like all you're doing is running to the side and stabbing, and you only have like one weapon, so you don't really have a whole lot of options. You just kind of have to keep dodging.
Right, which is good and bad, I guess. I agree with what you're saying. It just, the gameplay would get really repetitive and really boring when it looked like the guy had a rocket launcher at one point, or like a bazooka. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
something you pick up or you just get in the game, but yeah, but it was also, what year did that come out?
I forget, like 87, maybe 88. I'd have to double check. It was originally an arcade game, and this was the NES. I was just covering the NES port of it.
Yeah, so it looks like arcade was in 85, so your NES was 87 in North America, 89 in Europe.
Wow, I got that right
Pretty good.
somehow.
But just like in 87 and 85 being an arcade game, you really don't expect a whole lot else. It's not like there's I have this love-hate relationship. Did we talk about the game Infernax at all?
I don't think so.
So it's new-ish. I think it came out in October. Very, very Castlevania feeling. So like you're a knight and you're trying to collect, I think it was 5 stones or something to take down like the evil warlock guy. But it is hyper violent. Like when you hit stuff, like blood flies everywhere and all the little cutscenes are super duper graphic.
This is for the NES?
No, it's a PC, Xbox, and PlayStation.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it's just like that old school graphics, which were fucking awesome. But now for a game to be interesting to people, there has to be like this progression system. So it's like, so you got all these new abilities and you can level up your health, your stamina, all that, or your health, your attack, defense, and health. So it's like, it's not that in depth, but it's like, man, sometimes I just want to fucking play a game where you just play the game.
There's a few games that have come out recently that kind of do that. Celeste is pretty close to that. You do get some upgrades, but it's not like this continuous stream of things. I guess no, there's a decent amount of progression in Celeste. I was gonna say maybe like the Messenger. Actually, you know what? Yeah. So the Messenger is an interesting game because it came out a couple of years ago. But it's got like a retro style, like 8-bit and 16-bit, and I mean that literally with both. The first half of the game is in an 8-bit Ninja Gaiden, like on NES style game. And once you beat the first half of the game, it turns into a 16-bit Metroidvania, which personally I don't think I think the second half is a little bit rough around the edges. It goes on way too long. But the first half is this fucking great action game in 8-bit. It is one of the most fun. It's got great music, great combat, great platforming, and they don't really go crazy with the amount of, like, there's not like, from what I remember, it's been a little bit since I played the beginning of the game again, but you don't actually like continuously get power-ups until you hit the 16-bit version of it. And most people agree the 8-bit half of it is the better half of the game, and I at least in my opinion it is too. So if you're curious, if you're trying to find some good platformers, the Messenger's really good. And Celeste, I think it's got a bit of a progression system, but that game is just fucking balls hard, but it's so good.
So I did play the Messenger, and I remember the first half being really fucking fun, and then the second half getting so uncomfortably difficult that I'd fucking tapped out, never finished it.
I did beat it. I don't remember the second half getting like uncomfortably difficult, but I do remember it going on. It overstayed its welcome. It just kept on going. I'm like, I don't want to keep. I like Metroidvania games. Like I like Ori and the Blind Forest and Ori and the Will of the Wisps a lot. I like, Symphony of the Night. Like I like Metroidvania games, but this one, it got too boring and it was too long because you had already spent like a good few hours doing the 8-bit version of it. Now I still haven't beaten it, which is fine. I like the transition into 16-bit. It's a really cool mechanic, and they use that as like it starts out as just like something you stay in permanently. You go from 8 to 16-bit, but then towards the end of the game, they actually use that to your in like terms of puzzle solving, like where you have to, like, depending if you're on the 8 and 16-bit versions of the game, different elements of the screen are available to each. So like on, maybe there's a pathway that's only available in the 16-bit version on a screen that's not available on the 8-bit version. So you have to figure out a way to get to that screen and, go through the right portals to end on that screen in the 16-bit version of your character. So there's some fun puzzles with it, but it just goes on way too goddamn long.
I can't now. I'm trying to look up the game. It must have been Game Pass when I played it, which is no longer on there. I want to say it was just like one platformer portion that destroyed my will to live, and that's why I gave up on it. Have you played I think Cyber Shadow is another one.
I have not. I've heard about it, and the pixel art in it looks stunning.
That's another one. Is really fun. The progression system is pretty consistent, but it's not like overwhelming. That was a good one. I really like those 16-bit platformer games, and they make them here and there. There's a lot of them coming out, but I feel like there's
Shovel
more
Knight.
than there used to be. Shovel Knight, yeah, that's a good one too.
Shovel Knight is really fucking good.
Oh, man, so many fucking games.
There's a lot of games. What is it? Actually, in speaking to kind of reference back to the beginning of our conversation about like horror games and whatnot, I got asked to cover this one game, and I don't know. What are your thoughts on this, Matt? Should I mention the game specifically, or should I just leave it ambiguous? I don't. So I got asked to review a game by the creator of it, and it was one of the. I hated it. I hated it so much. They sent me over a review copy, and I don't know if I should like say this on a podcast. And like, you know what? He sent me a review copy, so I'm going to give my honest opinion, I guess.
Say that, or we could just have Erica beep out the name.
It's fine. She can leave it in. I don't know if he'll even ever listen to this. There was a game called Sacred Line, and there's it's and I quote, an adult adventure game for the Sega Mega Drive, which is the Sega Genesis over here. It was released digitally in 2013, and in 2015 it was released on physical game cartridges for the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive, and there's a sequel to it. And I'm trying not to like be too mean on it because it's an indie developer, and he put he put so much effort into it. It's very clear because the artwork it's fine. It's not my cup of tea. It's all horror artwork. It's just not my personal favorite. I don't know. It's basically this adventure game, and you can pick and choose what you want to, what your options are. And basically, if you make the wrong choice, you start back from a save spot or the beginning of the game. And so literally the challenge of the game is that there is none. Like there's very few moments that will just kill you outright. So it's just frustrating that there's not a lot of save points either. So if you want to complete the game, then you have to go back, and it's not like you have to redo some challenge or something like that. You just have to click through the windows that you already clicked through because it's an adventure game. It's just text at that point with images, and all of the writing was the writing. So the reason I'm hesitant to criticize it too much is English is this guy's second language. So there's probably a little bit of a translation thing. I don't know what language he wrote it in initially, but at least in the English translation, whoever translated it, or if he wrote it that way, it was just like every description, like you walk it, so and so walk, they walked into a room talking about your character. They walked into a room and it smelled awful and it's covered in blood. Almost every description it was covered in blood. It felt like, to the point where like, who's bleeding? How is there this much blood everywhere? There's not enough bodies for the amount of blood that you're seeing in this room, and it's not like it's explained. And so a lot of it just felt like filler text to this is what's scary, blood and bones. We're gonna fill every room with blood and bones, and just I never once was scared. Like there's moments that kind of make you unnerved, but that's only because you're looking at like these dark red like visuals with creepy atmospheric like music, but there's nothing actually scary happening in the game. So the unsettling part is just the music puts you on edge, but nothing in the game actually does. Oh my God, I feel awful because this guy clearly put his heart and soul into this game. He's made 2 of them now, and he made like a 3D version that tells like an earlier part of the story. The story also makes absolutely no sense. I just don't know what to do with it. I guess I'm finally doing my promised review for him on some other person's podcast, and I just feel bad that I just didn't like it. Like I genuinely I found no enjoyment in it. I completed it because I had to for the show, and I didn't have a time constraint on it. It's not like I had to beat it under a certain amount of time. It really felt like a waste of my time playing through it. I wish I could give you specifics on some of the lines, but woof.
Oddly enough, I almost bought this game.
Oh,
I remember not in like a, oh, this looks, I remember stumbling upon its existence. And then I was just like, oh, this is kind of a fucking cool idea. And I think if you paid like, it was not expensive. Maybe it was like $5 you could get the digital version of it. That's like as much effort as I put into this. I'm glad I didn't now, having listened. Like I knew nothing about it. I didn't think it was going to be good. I didn't know what to expect. It just looked interesting. I am looking at some of the screenshots for the second one just because that's where I got to. And like, here's a line from one of the scenes is, then it takes my skull from the remains and scribes something on it using the blood waste.
Using the blood waste.
Yep.
What? I just feel awful because this guy clearly poured his heart and soul into this, and it definitely is a lot of work to make a game. Like I don't think it's well designed. I genuinely don't. I don't think there. Take out my dislike of like, all right, let's say you can explain away the writing because of a language barrier, right? That's a very real thing. That like I'm sure if I try to write a game and in his native language, it would honestly, it would probably be worse than than what he wrote in English. It's hard. So I'm not trying to at all say that like he's not trying, but so take out the writing, to just scrap that in terms of like criticism. Maybe it's just a language thing, to even take out the visuals, because that's could be a preference of taste. Honestly, on a technical level, it's kind of impressive a Genesis is able to render the things that it's showing, that those stills that he is showing on screen. So let's just take the visuals out of the conversation too. On a core gameplay, in terms of core gameplay mechanics, it is just simply a click through. It's basically like a walking simulator, where like you don't have many choices. You're kind of trying to experience a story almost in first person. But since this isn't like a 3D game, within 60 frames per second, you're just playing through like a text adventure with images. You lose that immersion. There's not enough. There are no puzzles in this game. I think the puzzles are essentially just pick the right option, and that's not a puzzle. That's just a guessing game at that point. And there's no gameplay to it really. Like this isn't a game. It's if anything, you could make the argument it is a guessing game, and that's about the best thing I can say about its gameplay, is that you're exploring through this world, and if you pick the wrong thing, you get to explore through it again, the same thing you did before. I don't know how much of a difference the second one is compared to the first, because after the first, I just could not do it. I just couldn't. It was just not. I'm trying to determine, is it just not my cup of tea, or is it poorly made? Is it like just the game design is not very good? And I feel bad saying this, but the game design just is not very good.
For $600, he will make you your own game. I shit you not. So on the store, It says pledge $5.99.99. You'll get your own personal game, a survivor story inside the Sacred Line world where you are the hero.
Huh. Interesting.
Like, let's see. You'll be required to send information that you'd like to use in the game. For example, you can tell me your way to the work and boss who bothers you. I'd make you the hero of your own story where you survive in the Belgrade ruins and your boss becomes an actual game boss under the influence of the betrayer. Yeah, uncomfortable themes you don't want to touch, claustrophobia, etc. It's about your family. I'd make the story friendly for all ages. Sorry, but yeah, it's like he seems like you, and he says he will deliver the game in 2 to 4 weeks after you agree on everything. And you can pay, and he will program your name into the main menu of this.
He did that for me.
Oh, he did. Okay.
Yeah, he did that for me.
Kind of cool.
I'm on his website now. The developer's name, I guess, because people could just look it up. It's Sasha Darko. Very polite in his emails too, by the way. I'm sure he's a wonderful person.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm not even saying that to be diplomatic. It's just or patronizing. Like he was very nice in my correspondence with him. But there is some gameplay elements I forgot about. The fighting system. There is a fighting combat system where it's this dice-based fighting system, which basically just is random chance. You roll. I forget exactly how the dice system works, but it's not very. I don't know. I didn't have any struggles with it. I think I lost once, and then I went through it and just wrecked again. There really was not that much challenge to it. I don't know. I could not get to it, and I'm surprised seeing he has on his website. There's little blurbs, a game that masterfully turns the usual very family friendly Genesis look into something. Some of the most brutal imagery we've ever seen. And the image, I don't know. Maybe I'm desensitized, but the imagery's not that brutal. It's just because it looks because it's definitely pre-rendered CG, right? They rendered in CG, then take a still of it and use that kind of like what they did with Donkey Kong Country, do a pre-rendered CG and turn it into a sprite. But this is for static backgrounds, and it looks like a one of those weird training games that training games you play at your job in from the 90s with the 3D models and everything. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, it feels like that. I don't know. Anyway, I don't need to rant about it any longer. I've given this a bad enough review. I have not played the second game, so maybe that one has improved some of the things I disliked about it. But the combat that I referenced before with the dice base, even if you end up liking that, it doesn't happen until the last eighth of the game. So there's very little actual gameplay until the last little bit, where you fight I think 1 or 2 skeletons, and then you finish the game, and that's it. It's just not my cup of tea. Sorry, Sasha Darko. Thank you for sending me it, and it just, I don't know. I ended up not being a fan, and I feel bad because I'm sure he worked very hard on it.
So if Josh's description of this game hasn't turned you off, it's in a roundabout way available on Steam. So Sasha Darko made a game called The Last Dogma, which is $6.99, sorry. And then you can get the Sacred Line DLC for free, but you have to have the base game. Or go to his website and see. I think you can purchase a download there.
I think the reason I feel so bad and I put so many disclaimers on it too is I got this as a review copy. He sent it to me. And I just feel bad that he sent this to me, and I streamed it. I did stream it. So actually, you know what? People did see my opinions when I streamed, but I just feel bad that I got this for free and I didn't like it. And so I just didn't have the heart to do a full episode, just talk, really breaking down what I liked and didn't like. And what I liked was very little. So I felt bad.
Well, and to your point is, you did mention he was super nice and, very kind in his email, and he sent you a game that was customized for you. Yes, that is a feature that he does offer, but still, it's never fun when you don't like something from someone that you like. You know what I mean? He wasn't a dick. He didn't turn you off. He was a nice person. So you really want to enjoy something that they put so much time and effort into. So it's difficult to point out when you don't like it when you just want nothing but to like it.
Exactly. And it sucks. I feel bad because anyway, I don't have to keep I'll keep hashing over the same point because my anxiety is like, what if people don't understand that you think he's a good person? What if they think you're just bashing him? I think I've made my point pretty clear. The game wasn't for me. Maybe it'll be for you, but it was not for me. So I don't know. Maybe watch some playthroughs of it, get some other opinions, because there are playthroughs online. He's linked to a few on his website. So wasn't my favorite. That horror game I did not cover for my show because I didn't want to spend an hour bashing it. I honestly don't think I could have fit and gotten an hour out of what my thoughts on it.
Do you remember how long it took you to get through the game?
It's like under 5 hours.
Oh shit. Okay, it's longer than I expected it to be.
Actually, I'm sorry, it's under 2.
Okay, that makes a little more sense. Well, I guess it probably depends on how long, how many times you have to start back over. I'm sure that's a huge part of it.
And even then, it doesn't take you very long to get back through what you missed. So it's really not that much of a loss.
Oh, that's not so bad then. Yeah, it looks like there's plenty of playthroughs to watch on YouTube. It looks like the long play is 45 minutes and 55 seconds. They just went straight through. So one last thing I wanted to talk about, still bonding. I'm not a James Bond person, but I tried to find a way when we were talking about the text-based games, and you're talking about the Bond game, to get that way, but I didn't. But I do want to mention, I want to make sure that we talk about it, because for any James Bond fan, it seems like a really cool idea. So if you wouldn't mind touching on that one.
Yeah, sure. I don't know. I'm always so weird about advertising shit for my Patreon because I feel bad being like, you like this? Well, you got to pay for it. But I guess, it's stuff that I'm spending time on. Anyway, I get weird about stuff like that. So yeah. Still Bonding is a monthly show that I do with Erica from Monster Madness here. Her and I are going through all of the James Bond movies, one movie at a time, and it is available to the $5 patrons. And in fact, she released the first episode of that over on your Patreon as well, so your patrons can get a taste of what Still Bonding is like. I'm always hesitant to like I said, I feel weird being like, yeah, this is this really fun exclusive show that's only for $5 patrons and up, and but I'm legitimately having some of the most fun I've ever had podcasting with it. At the time of this recording, there's 5 episodes up. Each one is bare minimum 2.5 hours long. So for your $5, you're getting what? Hold on. If I can math that all out, you're looking at over 12 hours, 12 in between 12 and 13 hours of content. For just $5 a month, you're getting right there. There's so much there. Plus, for that $5, you also get all the bonus episodes that I do. Besides, there's a whole bunch of stuff for people at the $5 level. But Still Bonding is exclusive to that. And Erica and I have had so much fun going through all the James Bond movies. She missed 2 of them due to some family stuff, just typical colds and shit like that. And when you have episodes that go almost 3 hours, it's not the easiest on your voice if you're trying to get over a cold and you have to record a nearly 3-hour long podcast. So, but she has been a trooper through all of it, and she joined me. She came back for You Only Live Twice, and we had a lot of fun talking about that. And Still Bonding is just 2 friends bonding over 007, and we've had a lot of fun with it.
And you said you had 5, so you have 53 more to go?
Something like that. No. There might be actually 20 left then. I think there's 25 Bond movies if I'm
God damn.
doing, because hold on. Die Another Day was the 20th Bond movie, and there are 5 Daniel Craig movies. So yeah, there's 25 in total.
Wow. Wow.
There's a lot. When Erica agreed to this, I'm like, you do realize that we're going to end up doing this for 2 years straight, right? She's like, yep. I'm like, all right, if you're down for this, I'm down for it. Something else cool that we do on it though, and you might like this as someone who likes music, or is big into music. Obviously, you're part of a band and everything. Mm-hmm. There is a whole history of alternative Bond songs. Everyone's you always hear Skyfall, Goldfinger, Live and Let Die, the big famous ones. Well, there's an entire world of songs that like alternate songs that were written for the title sequence but did not get chosen by the producers. For example, in Thunderball, the artist who ended up singing that was Tom Jones. He did the Thunderball song, or the theme for Thunderball. Other artists that submitted their own songs for it, Dionne Warwick, she actually worked on the song with the composer of the film. So like, while you don't hear her song in the movie, you can hear musical stings from it throughout the entire film, which is kind of cool. Another person who wrote a song for Thunderball and did not get it, Johnny Cash, the Man in Black himself.
Interesting.
Not very Bond. It's very Johnny Cash. If you can find it on YouTube, it's very Johnny Cash. One of the stranger ones, there's a song called "The Man with the Golden Gun," which was sung by Lulu. Alice Cooper submitted his version of "The Man with the Golden Gun." Doesn't really work, in my opinion. Doesn't really work. No offense to Alice Cooper. He tried to make it Bond-like, but it felt a little bit too rockabilly.
Yeah. I mean, when presented with an opportunity like that, shoot your shot, man.
Exactly. And there's a whole bunch. Like if you GoldenEye, sung by Tina Turner, Ace of Base did a version of it. Look up the Juvenile. It actually is better than you would expect it to be for a Bond. It kind of fits with the Bond song, with the Bond feel. I do think they made the right choice with Tina Turner, but it's not bad. I think my most notorious one for me, Quantum of Solace, came out in 2008, I want to say. I think 2008. The song is called "Another Way to Die," and it was sung by Jack White and Alicia Keys. Interesting mix to choose from of artists. Like their styles don't really mesh outwardly, and in my opinion, they don't mesh at all either. Like they're specifically their singing styles. Like they sound fantastic when they're doing their own solo verses, but when you hear the actual song, like when they sing together at the chorus, I just do not think it works at all. And the alternative version, they brought back Shirley Bassey, who did Goldfinger, Diamonds Are Forever, and Moonraker, like some of the most iconic Bond, specifically Diamonds Are Forever and Goldfinger, some of the most iconic Bond songs. And they brought her back to do, it's called No Good About Goodbye for Quantum of Solace, and they didn't choose it. But like that one I mentioned in Thunderball, you can hear its musical stings as like the orchestral swing, like sweeping orchestral music in the background. It's so much better than the Jack White and Alicia Keys song, in my opinion. Like it's night and day. Like I can't believe they didn't choose it. I understand, Jack White and Alicia Keys were the popular musicians at the time, and Shirley Bassey would not have been, but her song was so much better. It's wild.
I never knew any of that, but I guess I can't say I'm that surprised.
Oh, there's others too. I won't go into all of them, but there's a lot as you go through the 80s and 70s, and like there's a ton. Speaking the last episode we did, You Only Live Twice, Nancy Sinatra sung that, but there was a bunch of like other musicians that submitted, which I don't know them all that well, so I'm not going to repeat them here, but their versions also were not that good. But I do play the songs on the episode so you can hear our live reactions to it. Like I've heard them before, but a lot of times Erica has not, so it's always fun to hear her react to what some of those songs are and be confused as to why they chose or didn't choose it.
Yeah, that is actually kind of interesting. I'm gonna have to fucking go pay for your Patreon.
Oh, it's patreon.com/stillloadingpod if that's what you're...
Awesome. Well, I do want to thank you once again for taking time out of your evening to come talk to me. You got to do, I know you don't want to do it, but you got to do the uncomfortable, this is where you find everything spiel.
You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at StillLoadingPod on all of them. Patreon.com/StillLoadingPod, like I mentioned before, with Still Bonding with Erica. Obviously, check out the episodes I've done with both Matt and Erica. Matt was on the Contra episode, which came out last year, I think summer last year. Erica, most recently... on the free feed, on the non-Patreon feed, she did Crash Bandicoot last year. She was on the Crash Bandicoot episode, but she's also done Metal Gear Solid 2 back in 2020. So she's been on a few times. So you can check all those out. Or if you like what you heard and you want to check out all the other free stuff, or not free, I'm sorry, all the other bonus stuff that I do for the patrons, you can go to patreon.com/stillloadingpod. So that's pretty much my spiel at StillLoadingPod on most social media. And on Hive. I'm on Hive and Twitch as well at StillLoadingPod.
Awesome. Well, there you go. Go listen to Josh's podcast. Video games are fun. They don't cause people to kill people. It's fine. It's not a big deal.
That's fine.
Awesome, dude. Thank you again. We'll have to do this again a little bit in the future when you got more bonds and we can talk about more video games and shit, and maybe Sacred Line 3 will be out.
Yeah, I'll give you another review of that one too.
Yes. Awesome. I cannot wait.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.